You keep having the same results because you keep choosing the same. Everyone says that they have a type when it comes to relationships. This isn't just your intimate relationships. I want to be the first to tell you that it's not that you have a type per se. It is that you keep choosing to audition for a particular role. And it's the reason why you keep having the same experience. Often, this particular role is the role of needing to be the rescuer. So you pick the dude who needs intensive care. You pick the friends who really need to go find a therapist. You pick the company that you can feel as though you're safe because you're always having to be the one who can solve everything. That's what we're getting into today. Now, I want you to look at your phone right now, and I want you to think about this question. Who comes to mind when it's someone calling? That one person, or it could be a few, who, when you think of something's going wrong, that's when they show up on your phone. Not when things are going wonderful, not when there's a celebration, not just the see how you're doing, but when they call, you know that you probably should have your keys in hand, shoes on. Now, this can go in so many lights of relationships. This could be with the dude or girl or pal who you keep entertaining who still needs to figure things out in their lives after 3 years. This is the friend that can't ever seem to figure their stuff out. And then they always need you to be support, or they you give them support. You take hours out of your weekend to support them for free. And then they do the complete opposite. And now they're crying because of the choices that they've made. This can also be at your job where you work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And somehow magically on a Saturday afternoon, during your non-business hours, your non-working hours, you find yourself having to be the person who puts out the fires because, you are trusted. You are a team player and you just handle it. This is the family emergency, always in crisis. Always there's an eviction due, car's out of gas, the air conditioner's busted, and you being the single, hot, attractive individual that you are, you're always the one that they reach out to. I want to really put heavy emphasis that there's a pattern going on here. And by the end of this podcast, you should be able to spot it. And then you have the choice to decide if you want to do something different. When was the last time someone showed up for you? Like, not just the quick check in, but the polite check in. Well, so, how are you doing? Okay, great. Now let me get to my stuff. No, but really checked in on you. We're curious about how you are doing. That sort of showing up is probably very foreign to you on the receiving end, but when it comes to the giving end, you know that very, very well. If you had to really think hard about the answer to that question, that is a really good red flag that you have been playing a role that you probably have been continuing to go after and audition for, but you're doing it very unconsciously. Sometimes we feel more comfortable when we are needed versus being able to have a healthy relationship. When I talk about relationships, because I try not to talk about those subjects on here because that is just ran through in so many different ways. Everyone has a take. I believe in a more holistic view of relationships, and it's always going to make sure that you are centered into that dynamic versus the outward blame. But You have to reflect on yourself to see your own patterns, which can be uncomfortable. If you can see a trend of consistently only getting crisis types of friends, men who really should be on hospice in the level of care they need, or jobs that in which you never grow, you're just constantly churning and churning, that isn't a the world's issue, that is a you issue. You are the reason why these sort of things are reoccurring. Now, you might be wondering, how did this role start coming about? I'm going to go way back to your childhood because that's where that started. It started the first time that you learned that being needed for something that you were feeling confident in was like it felt good. You were rewarded for it. You got attention for it. And therefore, that stuck. So when you're constantly feeling this like, oh, well, I can be the mother hen and be helpful, everyone comes to me, there is a way to fulfill the need of reciprocity. Now, it's not healthy, but it's fulfilling a need. Then there goes back to what I brought up a few podcast episodes ago about this good girl conditioning. There's this version of you that is rewarded for not having needs, so suppressing your needs and always putting everyone above you. That is at play. That's how we get here. You might be very mature for your age if we look back at your youth. You're always the mature one. You didn't get into trouble. You did what you were supposed to do, but you also did way more than what you were supposed to do for your age bracket. Now, just because we go through that as a child doesn't mean that once we turn 18, there's some type of magic wand that disappears. No, that training, that grooming then becomes more mature. And now you can see those patterns happening, but now it's in a really jacked up space because maybe you've married someone that's like this, had children like this, or have children now that are engaging in that dynamic, or it's your friendships or your job, or it could be all of them together. And so that's just a cluster overall. You didn't learn to need anyone. I see this a lot, and I see this a lot in my women who have intersectionality. So they are a woman, but they are X race. There is just this sense of not needing anyone and then having everyone need us. To me, it puts me in the frame of someone who's operating from a very heavy leaning into heavily into their masculine versus the feminine, because there should be a reciprocity. Like, yes, you need to be able to be a container and hold your own, but you also should be able to receive back. So you're giving, you should also be receiving. So if you're only giving, that means you're just doing a lot of withdrawals and no deposits. And that leaves you very dry. Feeling indispensable felt like love. It is the closest thing that you have been able to receive. This, especially when it comes to your job, it can be very delicate because this is how you pay your bills. But it also feeling indispensable. But if you also are not hiding underneath a rock, you also understand for the last couple of years, we have been in a very tumultuous layoff phase of this collective. So what that does, that makes it even more complex because you will go from job to job to job, clenching down on any and everything that comes your way and hoarding things like a pack rat when it comes to your job responsibilities. Because again, it makes you feel indispensable. And if you can feel indispensable, there's a level of control. And that's really the illusion of control. But we'll talk about that on another day. But that makes you feel grounded. You feel like you have some sort of stability, which everyone should want to have stability, but it needs to be in a healthy, organic manner in order for it to stick. Now, this applies to your relationships. So if you keep dating dudes or girls, or pals who are always in a fixer-upper mode. You are the fixer, they need fixing up. And then you get angry that if you were able to, help them build a business and then they get successful and then they leave you. Now and this has been a pattern. You seem to be like almost a startup founder. You get them started up and then you are phased out. And you will continue to keep trying harder and harder, giving more and more, thinking that this will be the right person, this will be the right opportunity. This applies to your friendships. You feel like, being like the big sister, being the comforter, always opening your home, always opening your car, your wallet to help a friend. It makes you feel needed. But feeling needed and being loved are completely different things. And it is a very uncomfortable acknowledgement to come to that awareness. But you need that in order to live your best life. Now, I want to get into the bit of the mechanics of how you can observe this being needed phenomena in your day to day. So I'm going to set the stage. Let's say someone new comes into your life. Let's say it's a guy. You're dating, you're on the prowl, you want to find your forever one. And you meet someone new, you're in this kind of newness of the relationship, friendship, whatever you want to call it, connection, and everything seems swell, but there's a difference with this guy compared to the others. And the difference is that if you don't feel really close to him, you feel like something's missing, there's some sort of spark that's lacking. And if you notice that when someone needs you, you feel a sense of closeness versus the person doesn't need you. So this guy doesn't need you. If anything, he's giving to you and it's making you feel very uncomfortable. You feel like this guy is lame, it's dry, or something's wrong with him. That would be a really high key way of knowing that the dynamic of this is off balance and that you are trying to audition for a role that actually isn't available. But they actually wanted to talk and engage and get to know you, the individual. And it's not from a place of needing to find respite, but an actual healthy relationship. If you feel uncomfortable receiving, that also is another huge indicator that this auditioning for this role that is to be needed is going on subconsciously. We often don't really want to sit with and unpack the why behind why we do what we do. And that means things just they do things. They just kind of have a pattern. They have a flow. This is just how my life this happens. This is just my reality. This is just how things are. And in reality, it's because subconsciously we believe that closeness requires us to be of need. And that if we don't get that, then we don't know where we stand. We think something's wrong when actually, no, that's healthy. It shouldn't be that this person needs fixing by you, especially in an intimate situation, or really any, but especially in an intimate situation. And for some women that I have talked to and have consulted with, they feel that when a guy especially shares something vulnerable super early because they have a need, that makes them feel like, oh my God, there's a bond, there's a connection, there's a spark. And in reality, that's kind of like a love bombing situation going on. And you're out of balance is what ultimately it is. But it feels, just because something is your normal doesn't mean that it's normal. And oftentimes our abnormal operates as normal, and then we are not able to understand the difference of what is and what isn't. We don't see that the reality we're living in is extremely damaging to us. You are not choosing people. in this sort of way. When you're doing this sort of dynamic, you're not choosing that guy. You are checking for applications to see if they fit and if you fit into that role. And it's not helpful. If you're only useful when someone's falling apart, that isn't love. That isn't a strong, healthy connection. It is just dysfunction and chaos. Now, this section may sting just a little bit because I want to get into the mechanics of the cost when we operate like this over time. So, this doesn't just cost you money, time, energy, and even if you have the best of boundaries, you won't get this back. But it's really a deep sense of self love and self worth. So the cost isn't that you don't know how you're loved or if you're loved for you, it's that you've never had the opportunity to even test that out. And every relationship that you've built has been built on your usefulness. So there isn't any data. There isn't any data to go back to see if there's anything else offer. No, not all relationships operate like this, but quite a bit. If you operate one way in one dynamic, you probably operate like that in some capacity in your other relationships and dynamics, which is unfortunate. It isn't about the people in your life being bad. Granted, some people are on the take. Like I will be the first to tell you. Some people are on the take. They are truly looking for people just like you to take advantage of because they see that, oh, you need to be useful. I need to use you. Boom, we match. We both swipe right. But for other people out there, they're not conscious awareness of that. They are actually operating in a sense of always needing someone to help them, that neediness. And then again, it's a match made because there is a need. I'm useful. They need someone to be helpful to them. Boom. And here we go. And so they're not isn't a bad person, a bad apple, but when this is the dynamic that has been this way forever and there's never been a change, like, the old saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it, that is what's at play here. Boundaries, as great as they are, they do not fix this. Boundaries manage the relationship. They don't actually answer the question underneath all of this of why. So boundaries are needed, but if this isn't the role that you're trying to support and keep sustained, you actually need to demolish this whole role altogether. And that is why I say it is very costly because you can add all the new self-help, self-talk, all these things to your life, but then you still aren't getting a different reality. And it's because you need to throw a grenade at your current reality and start fresh. Completely demolish it because you are safeguarding the very thing that you don't want. The real cost is truly burnout because you're not operating in a way that is sustainable nor truly authentic. It is that you've built an entire life and you still are not getting the love that you deserve or need. And these things, boundaries and that are not the same. Now, this episode is going to be a little shorter just because I don't feel like it needs to be long. So I want to give you a few things to kind of mull over the week and let me know in the comments how you feel. And if this was resonating to you, give this video a thumbs up. So I want you to understand that when you accepted this role, you got hired for the role of being useful. It wasn't by any one person. As I mentioned earlier, it goes back to your beginning, your origin. So the first time someone who loved you or loved one really noticed you, really appreciated you after you stopped needing anything. That aunt, uncle, your mom, your dad, Thank you so much for putting your needs on the back burner to help your sister. And this is as a young kid, as a teenager, even. And that felt good. Because if I'm really blunt, if we were to really unpack the background, there was a lot of neglect going on anyway. So this neglect over time, not getting your needs met, not being really loved for you, always having to perform, all of those things built up to you being the person that you were to then be able to start self-sacrificing and then getting that hit of dopamine of saying, oh my God, thank you so much. I so appreciate you. And then boom, that set the stage for this. That moment in time opened up to you, and you have been renewing your contract ever since. I'm not going to give you any sort of boundary scripts, any of that. Boundaries come when you are in healthy relationships and you want to make sure that they stay safe. Like, I always look at boundaries as a way for me and another person to engage safely in a healthy way because I value that person. I want them to be around. However, in order for us to have that dialogue, that means we have to dance in this certain way. It's like when you put babies in a playpen, it allows them to go explore, navigate, do their little thing, but within the confines of that space. And then they feel safer because they're in that little bubble, but they also have space to explore. You don't need a script. And if anyone's selling you some ebook about that, you probably should really pause. What you need is something a lot smaller and a lot harder, a lot more granular. The next time that you feel this pull, this urge to fix, to manage, to step in before anyone's even asked, I want you to do me a real solid one, and I want you to pause. Just pause. And I want you to ask yourself one question. Am I doing this because they need it or because I need to be needed? You need to sit with that. Allow whatever will come up, and really sit with that. If it's a friend who's in truly need, let's just say for a worst case scenario, a friend just lost their pet, their child, their parent. That would be a situation where yes, you would come step up without being asked. Hey, I'm bringing dinner for you and your family. I'm here for you if you just need to vent, talk, whatever. I'm here. That's a perfect situation where that dynamic works. But if it's a friend that says, oh my God, I just don't know how I'm going to do blah, pay my bills, go do this. That's a situation where you've bailed this person out more times than not. You have actually bought more groceries for them than you have yourself. That's a situation where you need to, when that happens, they're doing that heavy sigh. You should take that as a good moment to pause and say, is it that they are really needing help? Or is it me trying to fix them? Is it me who's trying to scratch that itch to be needed? Because it's like a drug. Because again, you are not getting your needs met organically. And so, as human beings, we will gravitate towards any and all things to fulfill the need. An example that I once discussed with a therapist is that, let's say, for those that may have an eating disorder, and it could be an unofficial eating disorder. So you're not maybe anorexic, bulimic, possibly, but not always. But you have a real complicated relationship with food. You get stressed and you binge. DoorDash is at your door for breakfast, morning, for lunch and dinner and snacks. And you really just go hard in the paint when you're stressed. Instead of going what should be an organic route would be you're stressed, you're feeling overwhelmed, which is normal. You're able to reach out to your support network. So that's your family, your friends, your partner. When those things are not available to you, be it that you don't have family, friends, or partner, or if you do, they're not able to fulfill that role, then you're going to seek out whatever can give you comfort in that time. Because when you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling stressed, your family, your support network should be providing you support and comfort. But when we are not able to get that support and comfort from normal organic means, we will seek out food. We will seek out overworking. We will seek out risky sex. We will search and seek out being useful. We will seek out substances, the illegal white powdery kind. We will seek out alcohol. We will seek out whatever it is that scratches your itch to fulfill the need, to fulfill that comfort space. And it's a very difficult pill to swallow. But when you're able to see your patterns, then you have the opportunity to do something different. Noticing that you have been auditioning yourself is one thing. Being able to even notice it in others is extremely vital because you also need to understand those tendencies, those patterns. So if you have this pattern, watch other people and see how they're dynamic because sometimes we may have been exposed to this sort of modeling. So let's just say, for example, your mom was this type of person. You haven't been ingrained into that. In order to be loved by this parent, you too followed that same dynamic. And here you are, 30, 40, 50 plus, having that dynamic. But you are like, because you're listening to this podcast, so I already know what time it is. You were like, I don't like this. I don't want this anymore, but I don't know what else to do because this has been my everyday. This is my normal. This has been my normal since I was 6. And so now you're trying to do something different. It will require you to have a lot of grace, patience, and being comfortable with discomfort. Because the time that, let's say, going back to that example of the friend who's giving you that heavy sigh about needing groceries, instead of engaging with it, you change the subject. Well, hey, did you see the soccer game yesterday? You saw who won? Oh, have you seen XYZ show? Have you seen this, new outfit, this blah blah blah? And changing the subject completely. And that will then force that person to have to come back around to it and have to ask directly. And then you can then have a conversation and say, hey, yeah, I've helped you a lot of times. And this month, I just can't do it because I need to focus something on myself. I need to invest in myself. I've paid for a course and I need to use my funds to do those things. And that's going to be an uncomfortable situation. And to even go a little bit deeper, the reasoning why it's uncomfortable is because of the unstableness of it. Will this person still be my friend after this conversation? Will they hate me? Will they be mad at me? And again, if you have been auditioning to feel useful, people being happy with you because of what you're doing is a drug as well. And so potentially losing that drug can feel scary as hell because that is what you have wrapped your identity around. And so essentially, not having access to that drug feels like you are losing touch with reality.